And thank you all for your opening statements. Your written statements will be entered for the record. And now we'll begin a round of questions for our witnesses. I'll first recognize myself for 5 minutes. Mr. Fima, thank you again for being here today. Arizona is proud to be the home of Honeywell Aerospace, one of the world's leading organizations in the AAM and UAS industry. Honeywell employs thousands of Arizonans at its locations throughout the state. I had the privilege of visiting Honeywell's Deer Valley site in North Phoenix earlier this year and participating in a town hall with Honeywell employees to answer their questions about the state of our nation's aviation sector. Honeywell hosted a summit here in Washington last week on AAM and UAS issues where many industry leaders participated. What key findings and recommendations from that summit can you share with Congress as we reauthorize the FAA?
Thank you, Chair Sinema. So yes, indeed, we did host an Advanced Air Mobility Summit last week. I had over 250 people that attended, including government, regulators, industry trade associations, vehicle manufacturers, including companies like Lilium, Textron, Vertical Aerospace, and Archer. And indeed, there were insights, takeaways, and findings that came out of that. I think that it's not just Honeywell say this, we've all heard it here today, and we heard it at our summit loud and clear, that we have a choice here to make. Great countries have great transportation systems. And the feeling that came out of that was that we may need so far as to have a mandate from the very top of government that we will be a leader here, much like in the 60s where we chose to go to the moon. Number two, this will need a whole-of-government approach. There are many stakeholders here. It is not just the FAA. It is local government, state government, associations, industry, and communities, and it requires a whole-government approach in order for this to succeed for our communities. Number three, U.S. leadership does not mean going it alone. We had a lot of international representation at our summit last week. And so the FAA should reach out and work with the other agencies in different countries, in Europe, Australia, Japan, and South Korea. All of them are also tackling the same issues that we are. And by working together, we can come up with a set of regulations and frameworks that work not just in the United States, but that work across the world. This is important for everyone. It is especially important for the US companies that are working in this area to ensure that they have global access and global markets. Number four, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit in AAM. We've heard about it today, whether it is things like transportation to offshore energy platforms or over sparsely populated areas, delivering critical supplies to disaster areas, wildfire fighting, pipeline inspections, drone inspection of critical infrastructure in general. All of these are sparsely populated environments where you can still have very high benefits. There's no reason we can't do immediate action in these areas. And then lastly, we industry also have our job to do. We have to continue to educate consumers, citizens, government, and industry so that people really know what it is and what it isn't. There was a phrase last week, the void will be filled. Let it be filled with the correct information so that we make the right decisions. These are the sort of things that came out of our summit last week. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bowen, the House and the Senate have passed my and Senator Moran's AAM bill, the Advanced Air Mobility Coordination and Leadership Act, which will establish an interagency working group to review policies and develop programs to aid in the development and the deployment of AAM technology and identify the safety, security, and infrastructure investments required for the development of AAM. I appreciate NBAA's support for our AAM leadership legislation. Could you talk about why NBAA supports the legislation and why it's so important to harness the expertise from across the federal government to safely and effectively deploy AAM technology?
Well, thank you, Chair Sinema, and thank you for your leadership on the bill itself. This should be a national priority, something worthy of galvanizing our government to move forward. As we said before, the benefits are enormous. But what we have seen is, as a country, we do best when we have clear goals. This is what we want to achieve. So bringing together, as it was touched on, the Department of Energy, the Department of Transportation, finding ways to tap in to some of the things that we are committed to. When we passed the bipartisan infrastructure bill, we talked about the importance of electrification of vehicles. Will we be able to use that same type of approach when we are making changes to our grid to also make that available to airports and make sure that aviation is able to tap into it? Those are some of the examples of how we need to collectively come together to recognize that what we're trying to do here can enhance sustainability, accessibility, affordability of air mobility, and give us the chance to do some of those things we're talking about. You know, a lot of the things we've talked about, we've used numbers, we've used facts, just to put a face behind some of this. When we had Katrina hit New Orleans, we relied on our general aviation community, used those airports when Louis Armstrong was flooded to bring stage-to-stage relief efforts. We can do the same with advanced air mobility, particularly as we're thinking about Hurricane Ian today. We can move organs for transplant. We even have one of the AAM companies that was specifically designed to move organ transplants. The benefits are very real, but it takes a collective effort, and that's why this needs to be a national imperative and worthy of collaboration and communication across all of our various agencies and across all sides and aisles of Capitol Hill.
Thank you. I now recognize Ranking